Ow? Just ow. It's okay, still recovering because everybody, it is time for my review of the last episode of WandaVision, the series finale, some might say, titled the series finale? Well, that seems a bit on the nose, doesn't it? Yes, we're going to be reviewing the series finale of WandaVision called Series Finale. So if you have not seen the episode, we are going full bore into spoilers because, oh boy, are there some spoilers for this. So if you have not seen the episode, go watch it now and we're going to get into it. So before we get into the nitty gritty of this, let me just say overall my thoughts on this episode. I think that this was a really solid ending to this episode. There's a lot of stuff to really love about it. I think that the core emotional story of this it hit me right in the feels. I was truly bawling like not 10 minutes ago at the end of this episode. There are some things though, and this is where I have to put the but, that I'm a little bit disappointed in, that I think Marvel could have done a little bit better, or honestly kind of frustrated me in the answers that were given when clearly they knew we would have been expecting more, and they kind of told us that they were going to give us more than we got. So overall, I think taking this episode for what it is, I really, really, really thought it was a gut punch of an episode, but taken within the context of the MCU, as well as the things that were said around the show, which granted, if you weren't paying attention to some of the peripheral stuff and things that were said about the show by actors and people, the creators behind it, I could totally see it not being a big problem for you. But for me, as someone who paid attention to that stuff, I am a little bit frustrated overall with that. So I want to kind of look at it from those two lenses as we go through this. The one lens of like, as an episode on its own, which is always what I like to critique something as, but I feel like because of some of the things that were around this episode, I have to look at that sort of stuff as well. But generally, I am very positive on this overall and really thought it was a true, really honestly on its own terms, probably one of the best pieces of the MCU that I have seen, especially one of the best character pieces that the MCU has done, which is saying something considering that the MCU, voice correct there, is known for just doing great character work. So let's get into this. Right up front, we get Wanda versus Agatha, and I have to say that the MCU's problem of villains fighting villains who have the same exact power set as their own was definitely doubled down upon in this episode. We have Wanda fighting Agatha, and then we have Vision fighting Vision, and then we have Hayward fighting children? I guess that kind of matches, right? Yeah. But the opening fight between Agatha and Wanda was certainly a lot of fun. You got the nice setup of Agatha sort of saying, like, I take people's power, so that she wants to take Wanda's power for her own, so that sort of sucking up of her energy, sort of establishing, I'm assuming that's a comic book reference, that her character in the comic book does a very similar thing. I don't know much about Agatha from the comic books, so I'm just assuming that's a reference, but I thought that battle was great, and I think Agatha just does a really good job hamming it up, but also giving that sort of like serious witchy performance. I also love when Wanda smacks her into the building. Obviously, we get the nice little kind of tongue-in-cheek Wizard of Oz reference with the house on top of her. That was, I like, all right, yeah, a bit obvious, but that was good. That was good. You earned that. Then we get White Vision coming in, the original Vision, and he looks gorgeous, by the way. One of the things, too, I should say, there have been heavy critiques of Marvel movies kind of looking very samey in their action and kind of bland. You cannot say that about this episode. This episode was visually striking and gorgeous, and White Vision was one of those things. He was just so stark against the background, like when he was like, cool guys don't look at explosions, walking away from that one explosion. He looked really cool on that, so just kudos to that. And Paul Bettany giving a wonderful dual performance as both Visions, though Vision without, like, the sort of more menacing Vision was dually creepy when he starts crushing Wanda's head. I was like, ooh, the cold, heartless version, and then the warmth of normal Vision, or sort of Mind Stone Vision, I guess we'll call him. So great dual performance by Paul Bettany in both of those roles. And then we get the really cool fight between Vision and Vision fighting themselves, and I loved the bits where they were like punching through each other, kind of taking full use of Vision's powers on a TV budget. They definitely did not skimp on the budget at all with this finale in any way, shape, or form. So I liked seeing that little elements of that. I think it could have gone crazier. You could do more with Vision's power, but I think it was very well done for what it was, for the budget that I'm sure that they had with this. It looked amazing. And I also love that Vision gets his superhero landing on top of Vision. So we got our superhero landing in the finale. Thank God. I was worried. Then we get a cool little scene with Hayward and James Woo, where James sort of is like playing like, oh yeah, you convinced me, but I got FBI coming. Is like, you're bluffing. Am I bluffing? I like James Woo just played that perfectly. I thought he was like confident, but we all kind of know there's like, all right, he's not really doing it right. But I like the final payoff of him being able to get out of the cuffs at the end there and calling in the FBI. But this does get me to a little bit of my core problem, and I'm going to sort of jump on this tangent. Is one of my main problems with this episode as a whole is that most of the sort of I want to say outside the Hex characters, though that doesn't totally fit, but the people that were sort of dealing with stuff outside of like Wanda and Vision and the immediacy within the Hex stuff, Agatha in that as well, I guess, they kind of all got sidelined in this episode. James Woo is able to call in the FBI. Darcy does hit the van into Hayward at the end, but then just they all both promptly disappear. Darcy just straight up just magics away, and we never really we get like one offhanded line about her going off to be somewhere else. I'm sure we'll see her again in another production. I think they said that she was going to be in Thor, the next Thor movie or something like that, but it was just weird that she just has the one line and then up and disappears from the finale. James Woo too, while he gets a little bit more to do to call in the FBI at the end, ultimately doesn't really do anything to stop Hayward at all. He just calls in the FBI. And then Monica probably was my most frustrating character, is she is completely sidelined in this in a way that honestly doubles down on something else that frustrated me, because she was captured by fake Pietro. And so I was just really frustrated that she was just off on the sidelines doing nothing and just stops Hayward from shooting children when he comes into the Hex, which was like, Hayward, why? I understand that these kids are powerful, but like, dude, shooting children? What the heck? And I also want to make something clear too. Last week, people in the comments got upset when I sort of said, like, I understood Hayward's side. What I wanted to make clear was I don't think Hayward was a good guy. I think that the writing of the show kind of let him down a little bit, because I think they could have played him a little bit more gray up until the moment where you realize that he was the bad guy and sort of like, oh, no, he's a jerk. In the show, they kind of played him as like all of a sudden he just flips a switch and he's just a complete a-hole, like up to the point of shooting children. Which I understand that they needed someone to threaten the kids, but it was just like, wow, dude, wow. It was just felt way over the top and really villainous for a character that I was like, his characterization just felt all over the board for me, and I was just kind of deeply, ultimately disappointed with his character overall. And Monica stepping in to save the kids was cool, and it was cool to see her powers and the bullets passing through her, but ultimately it was like, oh, that's all she really gets to do, especially when they kind of built her up as like the dual protagonist of the series in the latter half of the show, and ultimately the fact that she's given really not much to do other than to have powers is kind of ultimately disappointing, though I am excited to see what they're going to do with her, but we'll get to that when we get to the end with the after credits stuff. So I'm excited that she'll be continuing on in the series, but I am a little bit disappointed by her usage here. That also brings me to the thing I mentioned earlier, was Pietro, who he learns is just a dude hanging out in Westview, who was just their next door neighbor, who was the person's house that Agatha had control of. This was honestly the biggest disappointment of the episode for me. And this goes back to what I was saying up at the top. I feel like Disney should have known better. I feel like they knew better. Marvel knew better when they put Evan Peters into the show as Quicksilver and asked us to invest in this. And then they say things like earlier on that this show is going to lead right into Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, that was like going to be this big thing that this show is going to build into. They had to know that we were going to make those connections, that he was from the multiverse, and to have him ultimately just be a guy is very, very, very frustrating to me. I was just so kind of saddened by that. I was like, oh, that's really what we're getting. I would have even been fine if there was some nod to the multiverse. Like, it was cool that Evan Peters was hanging out just like his version of Quicksilver in the X-Men universe does. He's kind of like lazing about in the house, like that version of Quicksilver did in the X-Men movies. But I would have liked some nod to be like, yeah, this is just a guy, but there is a multiverse out there, sort of thing. And we kind of get hints of that again in the end credit scene to a degree, I would assume, if my guesses are right on that. But to just have him be some guy, I was very frustrated and disappointed by that. And ultimately how Monica dealt with him was also kind of frustrating and didn't take full advantage of even the fact that he was fake Pietro. Like, they could have done so much more with his super speed that I was ultimately kind of disappointed by that. So those are my major disappointments with the episode. But let's get into the things that I love, because I want to sort of finish out this review on the stuff that I loved. Wanda and Agatha go to the center of town, and Wanda is confronted with all the townspeople coming at her and saying that like Agatha cuts their strings, and they start confronting Wanda for the horrific stuff that she's done to them. And honestly, they are 100% right. It gets dark, by the way. They're like, kill us? Like, if you can't let us go, let us die. The one woman said, just let my child get out, leave her room. Let me hug her. Like, dear God, that might be some of the darkest stuff that the MCU has done. It was honestly kind of like, wow, dark. Very dark, which will get me into another criticism that I have towards the end of the episode. But I did enjoy it here. The sort of trope of grief-stricken woman who does these things, we kind of talked about it earlier in my reviews and other reviews. A bit tropey, but I like that she's at least confronted with it, and it's not seen as a positive thing, and at least is shown to be the horror that it really is, as horrific as the MCU can possibly get. So I enjoyed that element of this finale. And I liked that Wanda was eventually confronted with, like, no, heroes don't control people. They don't torture people. And so she eventually decides to break them in the hex and let people out. That's what heroes do. So I appreciated that Wanda came to her senses and was letting people out. But then we got another horrifying image where Vision starts to get lost, and so do her kids. They start dissipating, and Wanda realizes that to lose the hex means to lose them. Again, another horrifying moment, another gut punch to our character that I think worked really, really well in this moment. And I was starting to feel it. I'm like, oh, I know where this has to go. By the end of the episode, I'm hoping maybe one of them can survive. Vision can survive. One of the kids can survive. Or both of the kids could survive, I should say. But it was just ultimately, you just have this dread in your heart because you kind of know where it's headed after that moment. And just wonderful setup and truly a sad moment to sort of see Wanda realizing the choice that she has to make and the choice that she ultimately has to go with and what it will mean for her, I think is really great. But then we also get a wonderful scene with Vision on Vision where they go into the library to fight each other. And this was a great fight, the sort of shooting laser beams and everything. And then him grabbing our Vision grabbing, I want to say White Vision's neck. And it was sort of gave me a Man of Steel vibe that they were referencing Man of Steel there, that like, you know, when Superman breaks Zod's neck, I'm like, oh no, he's going to break his neck sort of thing. And I like that they let each other go and actually have a philosophical conversation. I thought that was a great sort of subversion of the big fight at the end. Of course, both Visions would discuss with each other and have a philosophical debate as their sort of big boss battle. That makes so much sense. And my big nerdy self was so warm inside. I'm like, oh, if more MCU movies could end with a big philosophical battle than a huge like bombastic CGI fight, I would be the happiest girl alive. I was watching the show texting with a friend, and when they brought up Ship of Theseus, I'm like, oh God, we all know Ship of Theseus. Come on, I took my philosophy class. But I liked their discussion of that and sort of like going into it, like, who is the real Vision? What does this mean? Maybe we're both maybe we're both Vision, maybe we're both not Vision. And I like that the White Vision gets his memories back and then just disappears. And I like that that's a dangling thread for the rest of the MCU to eventually pick up, because that is going to be probably one of the major bits that will get picked up in the actual movies of the MCU. Because one of the things that I worry about with these TV shows is that Marvel is going to just use them to sort of like highlight characters that we wouldn't get to see so much in the movies, which is great. I like Wanda and Vision getting a show like this, but ultimately wasn't going to have much to do with the movies. It was just sort of going to be like, they're not going to drastically affect things. But Vision coming back and being this sort of White Vision, I think is a sort of cool way for that to have influence. And we have enough to speculate about, like, he's out there, but will he be our real Vision? And there's sort of hints at that at the end with the last lines that Mind Stone Vision gives to Wanda. And so I think that that's a really kind of a nice little dangling thread. And I appreciated that here. And I thought that was a wonderful resolution to that fight between the two of them, just to have a philosophical debate at the end. Speaking of philosophical debates, I love that Agatha gets put into a vision by Scarlet Witch. Speaking of visions, kind of referencing back Age of Ultron. I'm like, oh, finally we're like calling back that power that Wanda had in Age of Ultron that she used on Iron Man that never came up ever again. So I like that it's finally getting a little bit of a callback and sort of not necessarily an explanation, but at least reused to show that no, that wasn't sort of like a weird bit of power that we sort of forgot about in the MCU. And we get the cool callback to Agatha and the sort of murder of her coven and her family, because it highlighted the parallels between Agatha and Wanda for me that wasn't exactly clear last episode. I'm like, oh, this is actually very similar. They both sort of, hurt their families and created this horrific world, but Wanda did it on accident, as she points out, and Agatha did it on purpose. She destroyed her family on purpose. And so I thought that was actually a nice little parallel that they drew between the two characters here that I think was kind of fun. Then we got zombie witches. We're at the point in the MCU, everybody, where we're getting zombie witches. Come on. How is that not the coolest thing? Let them not say that they did not do Marvel zombies, because at least we got it here. I am glad that if we are going to get Marvel zombies, it's Marvel zombie witches. That just, I'm all here for it. Here for that. Have I beat this point into the ground enough? Probably. Let's keep going. But then Wanda takes on the Scarlet Witch moniker. I love the little hints of the original Scarlet Witch costume, that are the crown that she has. I thought that was really cool, the sort of magical version of it. And then they go up and start a fight in the bigness of in the sky. The sky fights that all superhero things devolve into. But I thought that this was also rather clever, that Wanda is sort of saying here, take all my power. I want you to have all my power. Just take it. But I like that she's lobbing some off to the side, and Agatha's like, oh, what was that about? And we don't even think about it. And it's her building the ruins. So she's sort of tricking Agatha and using the knowledge that Agatha gave her. I thought that was such a clever setup and payoff. Really, really fun. And also a tacit acknowledgement by Wanda that she is using magic. She was so much pushing it back against the fact this whole episode and last episode that I'm not a witch. I don't use magic. No one taught this to me. But then she took something that someone taught to her that was magic and accepted it. And it was coming to terms with that as a character. I thought that was a really clever, because most of the time in MCU fights, it's mostly just, beat the other person until they lose in a clever way. But here, I thought that her using her intelligence and it mirroring her character development of coming to accept that she is who she is, I think that was a really wonderful, wonderful idea. And so I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I love it when they can marry the sort of big action fights and resolutions with the actual character development going on. Great job there. And so the resolution of that fight was great. I am a bit perturbed that the punishment for Agatha is that she's mind controlled and becomes the nosy neighbor. For me personally, I don't mind control stories within a work like this if it's used in a horrific angle, but this sort of triumphant, hi, you're mind controlled and you don't have free will, that personally kind of irks me. I'll just be honest, it kind of is a little bit of a triggering thing for me. That's just me. I don't want to put that on anyone else. I don't like that resolution as much, but I know that that's kind of a personal taste thing. I don't like people's agency being taken away, even in punishment, and it seen as a triumphant thing. Not that's my stuff. But I just want to be honest with you as a reviewer. That's the baggage that I'm bringing into it. So I didn't like that resolution as much just because of my own personal stuff with it. But I do like that it kind of sets up the fact that maybe we will see Agatha down the line and maybe she can become a good person, because I know a lot of people loved Agatha from the comics. Again, I don't know her that well, but I got a lot of comments from all of you that Agatha is a hero in the Marvel MCU. So maybe this is a way to sort of set up her coming back, maybe in the Doctor Strange movie or something like that. So I thought that was at least a nice little thing to be all right, she's not dead, she's not gone. She can come back in some way, shape, or form. So I like that sort of setup that they can sort of bring back down the line in the MCU. But then this gets us to the resolution moments. I like the little acknowledgement between Monica and Wanda, and Monica sort of saying I would have brought my mother back, so I understand. And that's a nice little nod to Captain Marvel in that movie and her mother in that movie. So I thought that was a nice little connection between those two characters. But then we get the true beautiful moment at the end of the episode where they go back to their home, Wanda and Vision and the kids, and they say goodbye to each other. And the moment with she said goodbye to the kids, family is forever, and saying thank you for choosing me to be your mom, I thought was just nicely understated and tied into the themes of this I know you kids are going to disappear, but you're going to be a piece of me forever. You'll always be a part of me no matter what. And that was brought to the fore in the final conversation with Vision. Again, I thought wonderfully understated. It wasn't a big bombastic moment overall. Just the moment where it says, I wanted to see you clearly, and here you are. And then when they go to the window and look out, and she shares that, I made you, and you are a piece of my memory that I made full and flesh and bone. And that sort of reminded me of the line from last episode where Vision said, what is grief but love enduring, or persevering, I should say. And that was, it just tied those together in a very wonderfully understated way. And the line that he says, we've said goodbye before, so it stands to reason that we'll get to say hello again. And we know that the other vision is out there somewhere. And so I'm hoping that will get paid off again, maybe in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, because that's what they've been saying this leads into. So I think that was just a nice ending for this show, but it gave us enough teases for the future, both on an emotional level and on a just like, ooh, let's think about the MCU level. Tore my heart apart. And when the hex disappears and you just see the outline of the house that she got to have for a little while, that I gotta say, I was truly, truly bawling at that moment. It was absolutely fantastic. And that's the bit about this show that I'm going to remember. I think that they just did that character and the resolution and the grief that of Vision dying. They gave it appropriate weight, a weight that was touched upon in Infinity War, but not really given its due in terms of how much was going on in that movie. And seeing it here, I thought it brought that home. And I think that they earned that super well, and I adored that. But then this gets us into a little bit some more stuff to talk about before we finish out here. I will say that it is a little bit weird that Wanda just goes off and flies away. I was sitting there thinking like, but she's gonna stand trial though, right? Like maybe she would be presented as innocent because it wasn't her choice. She didn't realize her powers. There's mitigating circumstances, but she should stand trial though, right? She shouldn't just get to go and disappear. So I'm hoping that gets brought back up in Doctor Strange at some point, because especially since she was also the impetus for the Sokovia Accords in Civil War, I feel like they wouldn't just let her go. Maybe that's just me. Kind of bugged me. I'm like, maybe she was presumed innocent, but she at least deserves, she at least needs to have a trial. In my mind, I feel like the world would probably be calling for that, especially the townsfolks of Westview who are giving her the like biggest stink eye ever. She deserves more than a stink eye. Again, I'm not saying she necessarily needs to be presumed found guilty, but there needs to be a trial. Just my mind to it. But then we get the after credit sequence. There were two, if you missed them, count them, two. One was setting up, obviously, Secret Invasion, that they're going to be doing as a TV show, sort of referencing the Skrulls and Samuel L. Jackson. Why am I blanking on the character? For some reason, I'm blank. It's like 1:30 in the morning here, folks, so I can't remember his character's name. But Samuel L. Jackson's character, Nick Fury. Thank you, camera that didn't speak to me. It's late. It's late here. So referencing that's obviously going to be a TV show. So Monica's going to be in Secret Wars. That's cool. Then we get one more scene with Wanda sort of in a cabin in the woods or in the middle of wherever she is. And obviously she's got magical Scarlet Witch powers that she's now learning and teaching herself. Oh, and also we got a reference to the Book of the Damned earlier on in the episode as well, and the Sorcerer Supreme. So Doctor Strange references there. And we sort of hear the voices of the twins. So maybe they're out there in the multiverse when we go into Doctor Strange. So she's going to go and look for the twins in the multiverse, and Doctor Strange is going to have to go after her because she's doing some terrible things. And maybe that's where we'll get some accountability for Wanda, and she'll maybe be the villain of that show. So definitely some interesting teases and setups towards the end there that sort of lead into Multiverse of Madness and Secret Invasion, both movie and TV shows alike. So I think that's sort of nice little cool setup there. So ultimately, like I said at the top, I think my thoughts are I generally enjoyed the core of the series. I think that the core of Wanda and Vision was just so beautifully portrayed and beautifully done here. But I was very disappointed in the sidelining of some of the characters that didn't really get a lot to do in the finale, which I guess is fine. They aren't the titular characters, but especially Monica. James and Darcy and Hayward, I could kind of understand being sidelined, but Monica is kind of having nothing really to do in this finale. Deeply disappointing to me. And also just some of the answers that we got, like Pietro and some, teases of cameos that we were supposed to get in the show. And I guess Evan Peters was that one because we didn't get Doctor Strange. We didn't get the other cameos that we were kind of expecting. Which, again, would have been fine if they hadn't kind of teased us with that and sort of riled everyone up in excitement. So that kind of frustrated me a little bit. So ultimately, I have to say, strong at core, a little bit disappointing on the periphery, but ultimately leaves me overall positive on it because it just was an emotional gut punch. And overall, this series has been one of the most clever and emotional MCU entries to date. Despite my disappointments in some aspects of it, I think this might go up towards my top tier Marvel projects that they have done. Great job on the whole from this show and this episode. All right, everybody, those are my thoughts for WandaVision. Just to let everyone know, in 2 weeks' time, they're going to start Captain America and the Winter Soldier, so I got my Captain America shield ready and waiting. I will be reviewing each and every one of those episodes as they come out, just like I did this one, so I am looking forward to that. But also, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Let me know, did you love or did you hate this episode? Did you have the same disappointments as me? I'd love to hear all of that. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and don't forget that I have a Patreon if you want to help me out there. But until the next video that I do, or 2 weeks from now when we are going to be doing Captain America the Winter Soldier, I will see you then, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Patrons, it is time to assemble! Catherine Lambeth, Miranda Janelle, Ashley Allen, Bokikio, Eli Bergmoss, Ashlyn Solstice, John Cool, Greg Gillum, Stephen Kleinard, Chamomile T, Randy Thompson, Wellington Marcus, Boyd Earl, and Marybeth Earl, Stephen Schuhart, Wayne Twitchell, Auntie Kate, 808, Rick Osborne, Dominic Noble, Ish the Mad, Buttoneer, John Steele, Meadow Whisperer, Gavin Robinson, Michael Beam, Munir Amlani, BBD, Jason Knott, Hannah F, Andrew K, Bree Beecher, Jasmine, Sky Skinner, Maeve, Skylar Gray, Flynn Nathan Steele, Tiffany Danger, Sean Piper, Geek Filter, Jane Packard, Wen Dizzle Bizzle. Why do I do this to myself? Sarah Bystem, James Karate, Jacob Tovar, W. Randy Edie, Mari Neckar, Bush, Celestial Dawn, Din, Mark the Edge, Pissed and Twisted Garage, Lily, Polly Mina, Laura Demo, Lisa, Nikki Gordon, Bloomfield, Andrew, Lamoureux, Zone 1 Librarian, Jenny Mabel, Michael Hardy, and finally, Corey Honkanen and Vale. Done. All right, not my best patron rap, but I figured it would still be fun for you to see all my failure on screen, immortalized in every video this month. Also, I know I mixed Captain America and Superwoman. Deal with it. But thank you, honestly, to all my patrons. I really appreciate all of you, and you really mean a lot to me. I would not be able to do this without you. Thank you so much for supporting me being an absolute dork and weirdo. I wish you all the best.